First, our thoughts go out this morning to the family of Pat Ward. Her passing is the reason for this month's special election. We are pleased to host this forum for the District 22 State Senate race, and that you have decided to spend your Saturday morning learning more about the candidates Desmond Adams and Charles Schneider. I would like to thank Library Board President Brian Hughes and the rest of the organizing committee for planning today's forum. We also thank all the special guests that we have here with us this morning. Waukee Mayor Peard, Clive Mayor Cirksena, Chad Earhart, the Dallas County Recorder, Waukee Council members Shelley Hughes and Shane Blanchard, and we also have former U.S. Ambassador Mary Kramer with us today. Thank you very much for coming. We very much appreciate it. The Waukee Library was built almost 10 years ago. Our library has come a long way since its humble beginning, and we are proud of this great facility and the tremendous staff that spent their time helping patrons. We feel that one important service that we can offer our community is the opportunity to learn more about who will represent our district in the Iowa legislature. Our forum will be moderated today by Lucas Casey. Mr. Casey is the assistant to the president and an adjunct lecturer in political science at Grandview University. He has a master's degree in public administration and policy from Drake University and is active in the community. Mr. Casey lives in West Des Moines. Mr. Casey, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Darcy. And thank you to the Waukee Public Library for organizing and hosting this special election candidate forum. Today's forum will be rather straightforward, and it is not structured in a debate-style format. Each candidate will be allowed 3 minutes for opening remarks. Following their opening remarks, I will ask the same questions to both candidates, and they will each have 2 minutes to respond, alternating who responds first. The questions I will ask are a combination of my own and submissions made to the Waukee Library in advance of today's forum. We will attempt to cover as much ground as we can in the remaining hour. Near the end of the forum, we will give each candidate 3 minutes for closing remarks. To the candidates, I want to reiterate that this is a forum, not a debate, so please respond only during your allotted time. To the audience, I request you refrain from applause or commentary during the forum, except during the introductions in a moment and at the closing of the event. And to all, please silence or power down your cell phones during this forum. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the candidates for Iowa's 22nd Senate District. The Democratic candidate, Mr. Desmond Adams. You can applaud here. And the Republican candidate, Mr. Charles Schneider. We flipped a coin prior to the forum to determine who will go first, and in the interest of full disclosure and to add a little bit of levity to this, Mr. Adams called the coin tails. I flipped it, only to find out that there was actually a head on both sides of the coin. So we determined the side that had landed with the Statue of Liberty was the tail. Mr. Adams won and graciously allowed Mr. Schneider to go first for his opening remarks. With that, Mr. Schneider, please, your 3-minute opening remarks.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to thank the Waukee Library Board for hosting this forum today. Thanks, Lucas, for moderating. Thank you, Desmond, for being here. And thanks to all of you in the audience for being here today as well. I'll just start by letting you know a little bit about my background. I'm a native Iowan. I was born and raised in this state. I went to Sacred Heart Grade School in West Des Moines for a few years, and then went on to Dowling High School for 2 years. Then, after 2 years there, my family moved to Newton, Iowa. They still live there, and I ended up graduating from Newton High School, and from there went on to Creighton University, which is where I happened to meet my wife, Lisa, who's here with us today. I fell in love with her right away. It took me several years to convince her to have the same feelings for me, but eventually I did, so it worked out. After graduating from Creighton University, I decided to get away from the Midwest. I went to Richmond, Virginia, and worked as a regional director for my fraternity for a year. Then I moved to Washington, D.C., and worked for the World Bank for a year as I was studying for the LSAT. For a while, I thought I wanted to stay out there and build my career in the D.C. area, but something tugged at my heartstrings, and I decided to come back to Iowa. Being out there really made me realize how much I missed this state. So I came back to Iowa and eventually went to the University of Iowa for a law degree and for my MBA. And I graduated from there in 2002, and my wife Lisa and I moved to West Des Moines after that and decided to make it our home. Currently, I'm an attorney for Principal Financial Group. I've worked there for the last 5 years. Prior to that, I worked for the Dickinson Law Firm in downtown Des Moines. 5 years ago, I also decided to run for the West Des Moines City Council. I was elected to the City Council in 2007 after a string of a lot of expansive growth in the city of West Des Moines. Soon after that, the recession hit. I'm proud to say that throughout the recession, we were able to balance our budget in West Des Moines without raising the property tax levy. We still added jobs, we still provided city services, and we still enhanced the quality of life for our residents. So it is possible to be fiscally responsible and still grow our economy and still provide services. 23 days ago, I was nominated to run for this state Senate seat after an unfortunate set of circumstances. And I decided to run for the same reason I wanted to run for city council. I love this state. I'm proud of this state. And I care deeply about its future. The last 23 days, I've been going door to door, meeting with hundreds of people, answering their questions and listening about what's important to them. I look forward to answering your questions here today. Thank you.
Mr. Adams.
Good morning, everyone. I also would like to say thank you to the library board and to the library, to all of our distinguished guests. We have several mayors here of multiple cities in the district, as well as a former U.S. ambassador, House members of representatives here in the state of Iowa, and all other elected officials, and then the constituents. So thank you, and appreciate you guys coming out early this Saturday morning. A little bit about myself. Some of you I have chatted with over the last 20 months, either knocked on your door, I've seen you in a parade, I've seen you at a meet and greet, or I might have seen you at some location in the last 20 plus months. A little bit about myself. I graduated from Drake Law School. I had the good fortune of having a clerk internship for the former Chief Justice of the Iowa Supreme Court, Louis Laverado. My undergrad is in education, so I'm a licensed teacher. But for the past 8 years, I've been a small business owner. I own an executive search practice called Adams Douglas. That means we search for senior level executives for major corporations around the country. We've even done some international work in Alaska, which we won an award here for the Greater Des Moines Partnership in 2007. I currently am on the board of directors for Mercy Hospital, their College of Health Sciences, and I'm on the Greater Des Moines Committee. I have 2 beautiful boys. I have a 3-year-old, his name is Solomon, and I have a 17-year-old named Khalil. I know we hit the reset button. And I have a beautiful bride, her name is Dr. Shondalette Adams, and she too graduated from Creighton. So, we have something we agree on. Let's start there. It's good progress, it's bipartisan. I entered this race, ladies and gentlemen, because I believe that moderation needs voice. If you've seen the signs around town, at the very top it says 3 words, moderation needs voice. I believe we need to interject that back into our political dialogue. We need statesmen and stateswomen, not just fear-mongering, not just cutting, but pragmatic thought process to get us from one point to another. We have complex challenges, and we need to address them with complex solutions. And it's going to take, and it's going to require someone that has the ability to step up to the plate, work across the aisle, and to drive that resolve. One thing that you can know about me, irrespective of marketing material, irrespective of all the wonderful glamour, all the wonderful pedigree, law school, boards of directors, Greater Des Moines Committee, how you doing, Kirk, all of the wonderful things. It all started as a high school dropout that earned a GED from a job training program in Kentucky, Greenville, Kentucky, Job Corps. So when I talk about hard work, perseverance, dedication, persistence, and commitment, it's not because I'm just seeking your vote. It's who I am. Thank you.
All right, for our first question, we turn to Iowa's economy. Mr. Adams, you will respond first. October's job numbers proved once again that Iowa is doing relatively well in comparison to the rest of the country, with just a 5.1% unemployment rate in our state compared to almost 8% nationally. What challenges, if any, do you see Iowa's economy facing in the near future? You have 2 minutes to respond.
I think that we need to really focus on our small and medium-sized businesses as well as our women-owned businesses. Women-owned businesses in Iowa have done negative 3.1% growth according to American Express from 1997 to 2011. That's half of our population. So when we start talking about recruitment or maintaining or bringing executives here or keeping executives here, but yet we have dismal numbers when it comes to being a female entrepreneur, that's not good for the overall economy. Today it seems as though it's a female issue, but it's really an issue for our economy. Secondarily, we need to focus on how do we get money moving for our small businesses. We give big tax credits away. I'm a fan of tax credits. However, let's hold our large corporations accountable to where they do business even though we provide them tax credits. Our small and medium-sized businesses need to be doing business with our large businesses as well. That needs to be an initiative that we push and we put forward. And lastly, let's really start talking about our job training. Let's not only focus on those that are unemployed, but in this district, there are a tremendous amount of people, as I have knocked on thousands of doors, that are underemployed. We need to start talking about how we can help people transition from what they may have done yesterday to a new career opportunity tomorrow. That way we can get money moving, and if money is moving, then we start to feel a far better far better for all of our citizens.
Mr. Schneider.
Well, I think the most imminent challenge that our economy faces is the looming fiscal cliff that we've all read about. Frankly, I'm getting tired of the term fiscal cliff, but it is what it is, and it's right around the corner if Congress can't figure out a solution to it. So that's the first major issue, and we don't know what the entire set of implications is going to be for that yet. The Des Moines Register, you probably saw, had an article this morning about potential impacts of the fiscal cliff on our state's economy. So that's something we need to pay close attention to. Another challenge in the economy is one that we've faced for decades, and that is the brain drain that we have in our state. You've all seen it. You've all experienced it. Young people get educated here, and they leave. And it's not necessarily because they don't like Iowa. It's because they can't find an opportunity here that fits their skill set, or they can find a similar job elsewhere that pays more money than what they can make here. So we need to make sure that we're creating opportunities for businesses to stay here and to attract businesses here from outside of the state. In order to do that, we need to make sure that we have an attractive regulatory scheme, an attractive tax system for those businesses, and we need to make sure that we're providing job training for businesses, especially in rural areas, through our community college, so people continue to have the skills they need to find jobs in our state, and so companies can continue to find employees who have skills that they need to run their businesses.
Thank you. Next, we turn to the state budget outlook. Mr. Schneider, you will go first. If projections hold, the Iowa state budget surplus could grow to over $750 million in the coming fiscal year. Come January, the State House will not be short on ideas for how to spend that surplus. If you are elected to the Iowa Senate, what will your suggestions be?
As you know, the Revenue Estimating Conference or Committee will meet on December 12th, and at that time we'll get an even clearer picture of what our budget outlook is going to be for the next fiscal year. As far as the reserves go, I think back to my days on the West Des Moines City Council, and when the recession hit, we protected our reserves. We didn't spend them down. We didn't waste them on ongoing expenses. We held on to them because that helped our credit rating. And because of our strong credit rating, we were able to refinance some of our bonds and ultimately save our taxpayers over $6 million. I mentioned earlier, and we're all aware of, some of the many challenges that our economy faces. I think it's important right now that we protect our reserves and that we get a better understanding of what the economic and fiscal outlook for our state is before we commit those reserves to anything new, especially if they're ongoing expenses. So right now, I'd advocate for holding on to them. And I also think back to just a few years ago, fiscal year 2010, all of a sudden, We started the year with a budget surplus. All of a sudden, we spent down our reserves, and the governor at the time had to implement a 10% across-the-board cut. And that was devastating, especially to our school districts. They had to scramble to adjust their budgets to account for that. So rather than put ourselves into another position where we have to do some kind of massive cut like that, I think we ought to hold on to our reserves and get a better understanding of what the fiscal outlook is going to be.
Mr. Adams.
Let's talk about 2010 very quickly. In 2010, Governor Culver stepped up to the plate because the REC, the Revenue Estimating Committee, came back, told Governor Culver that our receipts are a little lower than we anticipated. So what did the governor do? He cut 10% across the board. Everyone screamed, everyone yelped. But when he cut 10% across the board, the Revenue Estimating Committee actually came back, and there was revenue greater than what was anticipated. That is how we received our first surplus, which was $287 million to be exact. So when Governor Branstad came in the office, we had $287 million in surplus. Now, 2 fiscal years later, last session, we had $295 million. The moderator said we're going to be close to $700 million. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to have a cash surplus, that means that you have already, by statute, have 7.5% of the overall general fund put to the side, plus a 2.5% put to the side. So that's 10%. So after that 10%, that's when you have a surplus. Now, during the same period, what have we done? We've squeezed our cities, we've squeezed our counties, we've cut fire, we've cut policemen, we've trimmed budgets, and we've trimmed again. But yet we've done that even though we've had hundreds of millions of dollars on the sidelines. It's not about spending, it's about being a good steward. Being a good steward with the resources that you have to help our cities, help our counties, so that we can move forward for our citizens, so that we don't lose people in the brain drain because they have a reason to be here.
For our next question, we turn to education. Mr. Adams, you will respond first. Education reform remains a priority for Governor Branstad. What is one specific priority you would include in any major reform to Iowa's education policy?
As a licensed teacher, as a teacher that's been licensed since 1996, has looked students in the eyes as well as their parents, I can tell you what I have seen has really been impactful. See, people look at the educational system like it's almost a business, and it's not. In business, when you buy a product, if something impacts that product somewhere in the world and the price of that product goes up or down, what happens? You have to adjust your cost when you sell it to your end user. That's different than what we're talking about with students. What has also happened over the years? We've dealt with what, 2, 3 wars, recession. Who feels the brunt of that at home? It's the children. So when we start putting teachers in a position where a teacher is responsible for some of the emotional challenges that some of our students are facing, when you only have 115 minutes in a classroom with the student, but yet 45 minutes of that time is spent is trying to adjust the child to whatever some of their challenges are, but yet we're going to hold the teacher responsible for things that they cannot control. The dog ends up chasing his tail. If we're really going to be serious about education, then we need to not only talk about fully funding it, but being good stewards with it. Get additional assistance for the teachers. Train them in some different areas. Really be committed and double down. Because without a solid educational system, then what we're doing is we're really putting our future at risk in the business community because it's going to affect the economy. We have to start to really focus on our kids. Stop kicking the can down the street and stop only thinking that it's some 3rd grade student that can't read. Well, really throw money into that program then. Really put people into the program from a good stewardship standpoint. As a teacher in the classroom, looking at the kids, I've seen what's happened. We need to be committed, not just talk about it, but be committed.
Mr. Schneider?
Education is a source of pride for us as Iowans. When I was growing up in this state, Iowa consistently ranked in the top 2 or 3 states in testing scores. In the last few years, we've seen our place slip. To me, that's unacceptable. And I'm sure it is for many of you too. We're better than that. We expect more out of ourselves than where we've been. And today, it's not just enough that we be in the top 2 or 3 in the United States. Our children are competing in a global economy. So we need to make sure they're prepared to compete in that global economy. I don't think there's just one thing that we need to do in order to help our education system. I think there are a few things. First, we need to make sure that our teachers have the resources they need. I know teachers feel a lot of times stressed out. They always have a lot of demands on them. They're having to deal with situations at home in the classroom. My wife, Lisa, was a behavioral interventionist at Stillwell Junior High for several years, and she experienced that firsthand. So we need to make sure that they've got the resources they need to do the job they need to do. We also need to make sure that our children have the resources they need and the technology they need in order to get the education they need in order to compete in a global economy. And we also need to provide a safe environment for our children too. This is maybe a little bit of an aside, but I'm proud of the Waukee High School students for putting together the video against bullying the other day. There's so much of that going on in our schools, and it's important that our schools step up and do what they can to stamp it out. Bullying is so much more of an issue today than it was even when I was growing up, especially because of cyberbullying. So I think it's important that a lot of schools follow the lead that Waukee has taken and do something about that to help ensure that we're creating a good environment for our students as they learn.
All right, for the next question, we turn to the issue of property tax reform. Mr. Schneider, you will respond first. The Iowa legislature debated property tax reform last session, especially related to the commercial property tax rate. What is your position on Iowa's current commercial property tax rates? If you are in favor of reducing commercial property taxes as it's been proposed, would you recommend using state funds to backfill reduced revenue to cities? And do you see any necessary reforms to Iowa's property tax system outside of the commercial rate?
As I mentioned earlier in my comments, part of making sure that we have an attractive place for businesses to stay and for businesses to come, we have to make sure that we have an attractive tax environment for them. Currently, our commercial property tax rates are among the third highest in the nation. We can't compete with states on oceans or mountains or a lot of other natural amenities that other states have. So it's imperative that we create a good environment from a tax standpoint for companies to be able to stay here and grow. I do think that we need some kind of commercial property tax relief so that we can level the playing field with some of our neighboring states. How that's structured and how that plays out, both sides of the aisle, frankly, have come up with good ideas. I'm acutely aware, after having been on the West Des Moines City Council, of how reducing the commercial property tax rate can have an impact on cities, such as West Des Moines and Waukee and Clive. I saw Mayor Cirksena walk in here earlier, and Windsor Heights. So I'm going to be paying attention to that. One idea, actually, the Democrats came up with is instead of just having a rollback for commercial property taxes, let businesses deduct a portion of commercial property taxes from their income tax. I like that idea, or at least some part of it, because that would allow cities to be more competitive in commercial property taxes without affecting cities' bottom line. But there are other ways that we can look at tax relief as well. We can look at the corporate income tax, the personal income tax. There are other areas other than just commercial property tax where I think we ought to be looking in the next legislative session, and that's what I'll be doing.
Mr. Adams?
This is obviously one of the sensitive hot buttons probably to every single person in this room, whether you're a business owner or a homeowner, or if you're in a retirement home, or if you reside in an apartment. Basically, if you live in the district, this is important to you. There are a lot of good proposals, a lot of good thoughts. When we talk about corporate taxes, let's start there because the corporations are the ones that are yelping. When we talk about corporate income tax, people say that our corporate tax is high. It is. It's 12%, starts at 6 and it scales up to 12. Illinois is 9.5, it's actually 7, then you have it separate at 2.5. And then you have Missouri at 6.8, and you've got Minnesota at 6, and then off to our side, Nebraska, they're at around 9. However, what's the one thing that they have we don't? We're at 12%, and they're below us. I suggest, while we have all these wonderful cameras, that we cut our corporate tax rate in half. Yes. And close the corporate tax loophole. Level the playing field for real for our small and medium-sized businesses. Close the corporate tax loophole, cut the corporate tax rate in half, take it to 6%, the median in this country is 7.5%, and then take the surplus and apply it to the property tax issue. That's what I suggest. Because ultimately, we have to start to shave in places. That's how the corporations can feel a little better. Long-term sustainability. That's what I want to promote. Sustainability, not knee-jerk reactions to get us somewhere so we're holding this same conversation in 3 or 4 more years. Thank you.
We stick around generally to local government issues. This question will be directed to Mr. Adams first. Iowa libraries, like the one we're in right now, depend on funding from the state, cities, and counties to deliver information and resources to their local patrons. While library usage continues to increase, state funding has decreased in recent years. Should the state provide additional money to implement and operate Iowa library services, what's formerly known as the state library, and to provide additional support for Iowa libraries?
Now see, the news camera left on the library question. You guys saw that. Where's the support for the libraries? I support libraries. Who doesn't support a library? We need libraries. Libraries are challenged right now because obviously we have a whole new arena of technology that has impacted libraries. My oldest son and I joke, and I have it on video, my oldest son and I joke about the fact that he doesn't know what a card catalog is. Now he does. He didn't then. He has Google. But libraries are more important for the enrichment of citizenry. The enrichment. What they do, they bring us together. They're a place that we can do what we're doing today. I would support that the states continue to support libraries. I think they're an institution in every single community. I think there's more to life than just corporations and running around. I think there's an enrichment to grow, to learn, and to grow with each other. So absolutely, I would support libraries. I continue to support libraries. I think that we all do to some regard. The question on the table is how? And then that gets back to being a good steward. Can we do it with being a good steward is the question. I believe we can. But absolutely, I support our libraries.
Mr. Schneider?
Well, I think that libraries are crucial to the fabric of our civil society. My wife and I were looking at the quotes about libraries that are on the facade of this building as we walked in, and they're all true. I think this venue is a perfect place for a forum like we're having today. Libraries are gathering points for the community to exchange ideas, for lifelong learning, and to enrich their quality of life. As a member of the West Des Moines City Council, I'm proud to say that we've supported our own library to the tune of $2.2 million a year for the last 5 years. And one thing that, in addition to just having states and cities put money into libraries, which I think they should do, I also encourage libraries to try and partner with local businesses. Technology is very important to libraries these days. I know there are a lot of people in this room who are on the Waukee Library Board. I see some people who are on the West Des Moines Library Board. We have Microsoft in our backyard. Let's talk to them about partnering in technology issues. Let's talk with other local businesses about ways we might be able to partner with them. Libraries don't just have to rely on state and city aid. Let's expand the reach a little bit and try and get other companies to help partner with us. Companies also understand the importance libraries play, the enrichment and the value they add to our quality of life. So yes, I believe city aid is crucial. I believe it's important to have state funding as well. But I also believe we ought to start looking beyond that and trying to partner with other members of the community.
All right, we move from generally an agreeable item to maybe something a little more contentious onto the issue of judicial retention in Iowa. In 1962, Iowa replaced the process of selecting judges by popular vote with a merit selection and electoral retention process, with judges standing for retention election near the end of their term. This system has been the subject of debate recently, as we have seen efforts in the last 2 elections to unseat justices on the Iowa Supreme Court based on their same-sex marriage decision. What is your opinion on the current system of appointing and retaining judges in Iowa? Do you think it should be kept as it is, or would you like to see changes made? Mr. Schneider, you're first.
Well, generally speaking, I think that the current judicial retention system and selection process is a fair one. We have a group of people that evaluates applicants for judicial positions. They make a recommendation to the governor. The governor appoints from a list of 3 people who the judge will be. Overall, I think that's a fair process, and it takes a lot of politics out of the process as well. There's also an opportunity for people to remove judges if they don't feel that judges are adequately representing the Constitution of the state of Iowa and the laws of the state of Iowa. And we've seen that play out over the last couple election cycles. So generally, I think things are working pretty well. I'm open to suggestions for changing the process, but overall, I think it's a fair way to appoint judges and take politics out of the process.
Mr. Adams.
I like the process. I think it allows people the opportunity to have a vote, to have an opinion. Although, because we do have that open opportunity, what does that cause? Sometimes this causes some challenges, some rifts, because people have different opinions. But we have to value all opinions, not just a few. All opinions. That means that if someone has a difference of opinion, they should be allowed to have their voice. In our current system, they are allowed to have their voice. Now, the challenge with this is that we can over-politicize individuals, being the judges, that are in positions that impact our everyday life. That's an equilibrium. That's something that we have to balance. But I'm not in favor of silencing a mass group of people because there are minorities or smaller groups that want to stand up and have their voice heard. I believe they should. I believe it's to the responsibility of all of us then to participate and to make certain that we continue to keep our justices if you are happy with your justice. So I see no challenge with that whatsoever with the current system.
Now, it's somewhat of a follow-up question that was submitted through the public submission process to Mr. Adams first. The issue that has raised that retention issue most visibly is the issue of same-sex marriage in Iowa. And the question from the public submission process is, would you support a constitutional amendment, a state constitutional amendment, to prohibit same-sex marriage? Mr. Adams.
How long do I have on this?
2 minutes, just like the rest.
2 minutes, okay. We should have threw this right behind property tax relief. I believe equality is equality. I don't believe there are degrees of equality. Iowa has a long history when it comes to equality. 1839, there was a slave named Ralph. Many of you may know. That's before we even became a state in 1846, December 28th. His slave master in Missouri said, go to Iowa, if you can work and pay for yourself, then you'll be free. He came to Iowa, he couldn't pay for himself, but the state of Iowa, the territory at that time, did not send him back. Iowa has been on the cusp of civil rights way before the country. We have led this nation in these issues when it comes to women's rights. But I do not believe, in short, anything outside of equality is equality. This is not something that we need to vote on. This is something that has been handled in the legislature. It's been handled by our state Supreme Court. And now the next level, because it is a judicial issue at this point, the next level is the United States Supreme Court. And that's going to be the final rule on this issue.
Mr. Schneider.
This is a difficult issue for a lot of people. I work with people at Principal who are in same-sex relationships. I've had friends who are homosexual. So it's a difficult issue for me, and I know it probably is for several other people. A lot of people have voiced frustration about the Supreme Court ruling, in part because they feel like they didn't have a say in the process. This is an important issue that a lot of people have strong feelings about, one way or the other. And it's such an important issue that I think we ought to let the people decide where the state is on it. For that reason, I would support and vote for a constitutional amendment defining marriage so that the people of Iowa could vote on this. Let's let the people's vote be the final decision on this issue, not the decision of the Iowa Supreme Court.
All right, we're bouncing around a little here on topics, but I wanted to make sure that we got to a few of the important ones first. I didn't know if you'd be pushing us for time or not. Now to another publicly submitted question, and this question will go to Mr. Schneider first, related to health care for state employees. Healthcare costs for many Americans continue to increase at alarming rates, and Iowa is currently one of only 6 states that pays 100% of the health care premiums for state employees and elected officials. In the future, state employees and elected officials could be forced to contribute to their health care costs. Do you think they should be contributing to those costs? Why or why not? To Mr. Schneider.
Yes, I do think that public employees should contribute to health care costs. Everyone, almost everyone, I can't imagine there are very few businesses these days that fully fund the health care for their employees. The system we have now at the state level is just out of whack with the reality of the private sector and what taxpayers experience in their own jobs, their own lives. Now, I think we also need to look at other things when it comes to health care reform. We don't need just one health plan that's a one-size-fit-all solution. Here's what we did in West Des Moines. We used to have one plan when I took office in 2007. I chair the city's finance committee. And what we decided to do was, instead of just one size fits all, let's create 3 plans. These plans allow flexibility. Someone who's younger, like myself, isn't going to need the same level of benefits that someone in their 50s or 60s is going to need. So why not let someone have a plan that has fewer benefits, but also costs them less and costs taxpayers less? Then as they grow older and they need more benefits, they pay more, and the city or the state would also have to pay more too. So I think that it's important that everyone contribute to the cost of their health care plans, but we ought to look beyond that too. Let's adapt the system that we have and make it more reflective of the reality of today.
Mr. Adams?
As a general rule, I do not like unfunded mandates, as a general rule. So when we start talking about state employees, it depends on how you look at this situation. From an employee standpoint, one might look at it and say, it's part of my benefits. It's one of the reasons that I come to work and I took this job. Obviously, from a management perspective, you may take the position that, it's really impacting our bottom line. I tend to believe that an employee, if they chose to take a role, they chose to take a position, they should be given that choice as to whether or not they choose to participate in paying in the system. However, reality exists, and discussions have already been had, and people are already discussing this in open conversation, that we realize for us to move forward, both employee and employer have to start to move forward together. That's going to require a little give and a little take, a little word like compromise in order for us to move forward. The end goal is fiscal responsibility and something in a system that is sustainable for all. Not just gotcha politics that we say we'll do this and we won't do that, but more, how do we handle this in a sustainable fashion? As of today, yes, I do believe that I side with employees and what they have been able to collectively bargain. However, I also understand that both employees and employers moving forward are going to be looking at the same issue from different sides.
All right, now we move back to another local government economic development related question. This will go to Mr. Adams first. This is a publicly submitted question, so I can't verify this number for sure, but they stated currently 399 Iowa cities use tax increment financing as an economic development incentive. That would be most of Iowa cities, and I would tend to agree that most do. What is your opinion on TIF as an economic development tool, and what other ways can cities recruit and secure businesses? To Mr. Adams.
Cities can recruit and secure businesses based on their quality of life and what options they provide for families that are moving into these cities. The infrastructure of the city, what the city can provide its citizens, how the city treats its citizens. But specifically to TIF, I'm in favor of TIF. The challenge with TIF is when TIF is misapplied. So, for instance, in Cedar Rapids, when one community loses an anchor store to go across the street to another community and they utilize TIF, that's disingenuous. That's intellectually disingenuous. TIF was meant so that we could build and could provide opportunities for businesses and corporations to come in and shore up areas within our community, give them tax incremental financing to help them come so we can build their business base and help our communities. It was not meant to poach a business that's across the street. So today, I like Waukee. I've built my business in Waukee, but I'm going to use a tax incremental financing tool. Like in Cedar Rapids, they did this, and I'm going to poach a corporation from West Des Moines. That's intellectually disingenuous. I'm not in favor of misapplied, and the elected officials should be held accountable for that. But as an overall general economic development tool, yes, I am in favor of TIF.
Mr. Schneider?
West Des Moines has relied on TIF with a lot of success in recent years. And TIF has been helpful to West Des Moines and other cities like it to help bring businesses here. Part of the reason why is you have to build new infrastructure and new roads sometimes to get a business here, such as Wells Fargo or Aviva. With tax increment financing, we're able to take the increment on the tax revenue that we get to pay for that new infrastructure. The alternative is to have all the taxpayers in the city pay for the cost of that infrastructure. So part of the helpful benefit of TIF is being able to make sure that we're using just that increment to pay for new development. Now, there can be abuses of TIF. I think the legislature took a good step in the right direction last year to require more accountability and more transparency when it comes to tax increment financing. And we're starting to see some of the results of that in our cities. I know in West Des Moines we've had to publicly approve through the city council tax increment financing that before we didn't have to do. I think that level of accountability and transparency is good.
Believe it or not, our hour is winding down. I have one final question before we go to closing remarks. This on partisanship and cooperation in the State House. No matter the outcome of this special election, the State House will be split, each chamber led by a slim majority of opposing parties. If you're elected, what are your plans to cooperate with the opposition in your chamber and across the State House to achieve policy priorities? To Mr. Schneider.
One of the nice things about being on the West Des Moines City Council is that it's a nonpartisan position. We don't worry about scoring political points or settling political scores. All we worry about is solving problems. That approach has worked well for us in West Des Moines and for me personally on the West Des Moines City Council. That's the same kind of approach that I would take to the state capitol if I'm elected as the next state senator. For me, that starts by building relationships. And I think I've been able to do that pretty successfully. We don't have a lot of partisan battles on the West Des Moines City Council, but we do have people of different political affiliations. One of our council members is a union guy, a staunch Democrat, but he's supporting me in my state Senate campaign. And he's doing that because he knows that I focus on solving problems, not on political infighting and political bickering. In the past, when we've had issues on the city council, we've been able to solve them and work through them. And I think it all does boil down to relationships and establishing good relationships and good working relationships and focusing on solving a problem rather than just cashing in political chits or scoring political scores.
Mr. Adams?
We can talk about bipartisan. Let's talk about bipartisan. Let's talk about running for election as a Democrat in a Republican-leaning district for 2 years. Let's talk about knocking on over 7,000 doors in the rain and 100-degree weather and 16 parades and 58 house parties. Let's talk about going on WHO radio and dealing with some of your most conservative talk show hosts. Let's talk about being bipartisan.
That's hard for me to
You know, bipartisan is stepping up and talking to both sides. See, I have a personal philosophy that anyone in this room that has talked to me personally understands, and that is that the flattest pancake has two sides. No matter how strong you feel about your issue, there is someone that feels just as strong on the other side of that issue. So you have to show through your deliberate action that you will be bipartisan. There's a press release that came out about 3 or 4 weeks ago that said that this Senate seat is the pride of the GOP. I take refuge with that. The reality is this is a seat for you, not the pride of the GOP, not the pride of the Democrats, the pride of the homeowners and the people that live here. If we're going to start talking about moving forward, then really move forward. Don't just rehash old ideas that have absolutely no tenor other than the fact of dividing. So we can talk bipartisan. We have big issues here. We got rural versus urban. We've got West Des Moines versus Clive, Clive versus Windsor Heights, Windsor Heights versus Waukee. We got Waukee versus the state, fastest growing city in the state as well as one of the fastest in the country. We've got real challenges here. It's time for us to really start moving forward and add some intellectual curiosity to what's happening, not just hanging fruit. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, we've done really well. You've stayed within your time constraints and been very collegial. We appreciate that. And now we're near the end, so we invite you to make your closing remarks. Please keep them to 3 minutes. Mr. Adams, you are first.
First, I'd like to thank you, Charles, for taking time on your Saturday to come out. I also like to thank you for running. As running for 20 plus months, I know it's a challenge. I'd like to thank his wife as well. I know that you have to deal with him being in and out of the house and probably in and out with him. It's a lot to do. And I also thank you for your service in West Des Moines on the city council. Thank you for taking your Saturday to come listen to us as well. It's a lot easier to listen to someone than just to read about who and what you believe they might be. Ladies and gentlemen, to me, this race, and has been, is about charting the course, leadership, not steering the ship. It's about charting the course. When I stepped on this platform over 20 months ago, everyone said, Desmond, as a Democrat in the western suburbs, you wouldn't have a shot. And I said, that's not true. And I've proved that. The reality is, because of the background, the law degree, the undergrad, the boards, the hard work, the perseverance, a family man, I understand and can tap into the vein of each and every one of you. Are there going to be things that we may disagree on? Absolutely. I disagree with my wife quite often. But the reality is, we still move in the same direction. In 2 years, I have participated in over 16 parades, over 65 house parties. We've created over 40 videos up for you to see on our website. It's over 7,000 doors knocked. I've been away from my 3-year-old son, and I've been campaigning for 20 months. You do the math. I care, and you know me. I've had a terrific relationship with my former opponent, the late Senator, rest her soul. Never one negative word between the two of us. We only focused on the issues. And focusing on the issues today, I still do. It's time that we move forward. You understand that the one thing that we're lacking, irrespective of Charles and Desmond, is leadership. Because we feel like a buoy in the middle of the water that gets moved every time somebody is on CNBC, MSNBC, or Fox News. It's time we start looking at issues from both sides of that pancake I was telling you about. It's time we start to really dig deep and understand we have complex challenges, and it's time that we chart the course, not simply steer the ship. I thank you for your time, and I hope to shake each and every one of your hands before you leave. Thank you very much.
Mr. Schneider?
I also want to again thank the Waukee Library Board for hosting this forum. For Desmond for being here. This has been a good, productive exchange of ideas, I think. And by the way, I really value or admire you for your personal background and what you've been able to overcome. I think you're an inspiration for a lot of people. I'm glad you're running for this office, and I really respect you for that. I'm running for the state senate for a lot of the same reasons I ran for West Des Moines City Council. First, I want to turn Iowa from a brain drain state into a brain gain state. I mentioned earlier that we've had a brain drain problem in Iowa for decades. We've all experienced that. The most poignant point for me came when I graduated from the University of Iowa in 2002. A significant percentage of my classmates from both the law and the MBA programs left Iowa after graduating. Not necessarily because they don't like Iowa, but because they couldn't find a job here that utilized their skill set, or they could find a similar job in a different state that paid them more money. And that's important when you have student debt to pay off. We need to create more jobs in this state. Second, I believe in fiscally responsible government. I mentioned that in West Des Moines, we've gotten through the recession without raising the property tax levy. We've been able to balance our budget every year, provide city services, and grow our economy. At the state level, I believe we need to continue to make sure that we're not spending more than we take in. I believe we need to preserve our reserves rather than squander them on ongoing spending. Third, I believe we need to prepare our children to compete in a global economy. I work in a company that has a global footprint, offices in almost every continent on this earth. Offices in cities ranging from Hong Kong and Beijing to Kuala Lumpur and Mumbai. We have companies in the Senate District that also have a global footprint. Wells Fargo, as an example, and Microsoft. And we have industry leaders like Aviva. These companies provide good jobs for Iowans. We need to make sure that our children are prepared to take those jobs when they graduate from school. These are some of the issues that I want to tackle if I have the honor of being your next state senator. My background as a West Des Moines City Council member has prepared me to face these challenges. I ask you for your vote on December 11th, and I would be honored to be your next state senator. Thank you.
Thank you again, gentlemen, for participating in today's forum. As a resident of this district and voter in the upcoming special election, I truly appreciate your willingness to serve, as I know everyone here does as well. Now, I know we didn't get to ask them each and every question, but if they truly do want your vote, I would guess they're going to stick around for a little while. I don't know if there's any coffee left or if you all hit it too hard already, but I think there might still be some refreshments available, some extra handshaking and some questions. So please remember that the special election for this Senate district is Tuesday, December 11th. Thank you again for coming, and have a nice week.